Have you ever wondered if your ancestors are trying to speak to you or reach out to you? I know I have. And this time of year, it's very interesting. It's been coming up a lot. So today on Creatrix, we are going to talk about 11 signs of how your ancestors might be trying to contact you or speak to you. My name is Katryn, and I am so excited to talk to you about this topic today. We don't have a guest, it's just you and me. So thank you for being here and tuning in, whether you're live or catching us on the replay or YouTube. Today is November 1st. So yesterday in many cultures, it was Halloween, and it's also known as All Hallows Eve. And people say at this time of year, the veil starts to get thinner, right? And so today is Samhain or Saman, depending on how you pronounce it. And in the Christian church or the Catholic church, it was considered All Saints Day, which came out of the pagan or Celtic tradition of honoring the dead. And then tomorrow, November 2nd, is also known as All Souls Day, which is more celebrated in a Mexican culture, but again, stems from Catholic or Christian traditions. So the veil tends to get thinner. People are more interested in these things. On Halloween, children and others dress up as goblins and ghosts and have fun and trick or treat. But really, it originated as a time of honoring the dead, honoring our ancestors. Many cultures do this, and the veil tends to thin at this time of the year. In a lot of northern climates, it's getting colder. We're settling into winter, and it's a time that is said that we can connect more easily with the other side of the veil, more readily with our ancestors, but of course it can happen at any time. So I just thought, because I am diving into ancestral work more and more, that we could talk about it. And instead of telling you how to connect with them, like we did in a little bit of one episode, and we'll do in future runs, how you can tell if maybe they're trying to get your attention. And I'm going to throw in some personal anecdotes. So the first way, and many of you may be familiar with this, is you're noticing a change in temperature. And this is not meaning that someone has actually turned up or down the heat in the place where you lived, but that the temperature outside of you is constant, but all of a sudden you notice it's gotten colder or hotter significantly, where you get goosebumps and chills. That may be a sign that someone wants to get your attention and talk to you or communicate something to you, or maybe have you heal something for them. Okay, so number two, the second way is like electrical disturbances, and that can come in many forms. One is like flickering lights. People tend to say that is a way the dead or our past loved ones are trying to reach us. But another way is not just flickering lights, but like electrical surges or electrical disruptions. And today that can be computers and things, but many years ago, when we didn't have these electrical devices, it could have been in other ways. And so one story that my mother used to tell was that the house that we lived in, my parents still lived there like 55 years and going strong. But when I was about 7, we were remodeling our house, and the shape of the house completely changed on the inside. They replaced rooms, they put them in different spots. And before that happened, there was a clock on the wall, like an old clock with a little telephone that you could pick up, like a Mach one, and you had to plug it in for the clock to work. The clock was unplugged for a long time, and yet every once in a while it would start to work, and you would hear the tick tock of it. And my mom used to say that that was someone trying to reach out. So if you notice any type of electrical disturbances, whether they're that simple or more complex or flickering lights, just ask, is someone trying to reach me? And see what the energy tells you. Okay, so number 3 is sounds. And again, this is similar to the first one, where you're noticing sounds, but nothing is there. Now, some people may label us as crazy, but you're really hearing a sound and you're not crazy, but it's not a sound that someone has turned on. So you're hearing music, you're just hearing something. And oftentimes it can be in the tradition or culture or heritage that your ancestor or loved one had come from or liked or listened to. And that was another story my mother used to tell me before the remodeling of the house, was that they would hear old French music. And my great grandfather on my father's side had lived in that house before they did. And the music would play in the middle of the night. She would hear it. However, once they remodeled the house and everything changed, they no longer heard the music again, and they no longer heard the ticking of that clock. So notice that there are sounds that you're hearing. You are not crazy. It just might be someone trying to reach out to you. Okay, number 4, shadows. Have you ever noticed that sometimes out of the corner of your eye, you catch a glimpse of a shadow? That actually might be the soul or the essence or the entity of someone trying to reach out to you. And again, you are not crazy. These things happen to a lot of people. And part of the reason for this episode is to normalize it a little bit, to help people not be afraid. These things are more common, and more people are becoming okay with speaking about it. And so the more we speak about it and normalize it, 2 things: we don't feel crazy, and it honors those loved ones, and gives them voice and gives them acknowledgement that they are here and this is real and these other dimensions. Okay, so shadows. Notice the shadows. Number 5. Oh, this is a fun one. Insects and bugs. And this has happened to me recently. So sometimes people say if you notice certain insects and bugs or animals even, that might be your loved one trying to connect to you. I remember stories of hearing people, a woman I knew would see a red cardinal and know that that was her father. His presence was there. Maybe he wasn't trying to speak something, but just wanted her to know that she was there. There are many stories like this. And recently I had an encounter with many moths, and they're actually kind of stuck in my hair. I'm not going to go into that, but I was a little spooked about it at first, if you will. And then I did some research. And one of the first things that I had read that said sometimes, like, especially in the culture of Singapore, they believe that if you see moths, it is your ancestors trying to reach you. And there were many of these, like multiple ones for me. And I recently have done ancestral healing. I'm going to talk about this one in a minute for me and my triad, Kristen Lemaster and Sandra Orndorff. But if you notice these, especially in unsuspecting places, or a random bug in a place that it shouldn't be, or a recurrent bird like the cardinal or something else that you just keep seeing and you have this feeling of warmth or something, know that that might be one of your ancestors reaching out to you. Okay. Okay, here's an interesting one. I'm going to just call it a general one. Pain in a body part that has no medical meaning or no other meaning that you can have. So for example, a friend of mine, she's been getting a lot of pain in her ears and she cannot figure out where it's from. She's been to the doctor. She's done all the things. They've run many tests. There's no reason for it happening. So she went to see an energy healer or a cranial sacral therapist, and who she'd never met before and knows nothing about her and the work that she does. And she told her about the pain in her ears. And although she worked on her head, with the bones, she told her that it meant that her ancestors were trying to speak to her. And that was really interesting timing, because it was the same day of my moth experience, and we've been doing this healing work together. So I tell you, there's synchronicities that are happening that if you just sit and get quiet and ask, don't judge the information that comes up. Or if you think that it is someone that you've known and is on the other side, know that it's real, or begin to trust that it's real. So it doesn't have to be pain in your ears, but ears are very auditory. If you've seen the episode that I did with Maria Leggett and other episodes about clairaudience and 5th chakra, know that that's a way of trying to communicate and hear. But other pain in your body, maybe it could be like a pain in your arm that is hurting you. Again, no medical reason. You didn't fall and hurt yourself like I did recently. It's just a pain. And it could be if you had a loved one that died of that pain, like maybe they had their arm chopped off, or a recent happening, a story of my great grandmother had died of stomach cancer. And I was working with Sandra, who knew nothing about that. And she said someone was trying to come inside to talk to us. And she noticed she had a lot of intense pain in her belly. And it was that sensation and a couple of other questions that we discerned that we knew who it was, that it was this great, great, great grandmother. And there were a lot of messages and synchronicities. So again, go get your pains diagnosed or checked out. But if there's no reason for them, just consider that someone's trying to reach out to you. Okay, number 7 is touches. This is when you might feel like you're being touched on your shoulder, your arm, your back, but no one is there. Again, you are not crazy. Someone from the other side of the veil may be trying to get your attention. And I've been hearing more stories of this in the last year, how much more common this is, but people don't talk about it because they don't understand it. They don't want to be called crazy, or it just sounds too weird. So if you feel that, just know it just might be someone giving you a love pat on your back, that they just want you to know that they're still around and they love you and they are here supporting you, even though you can't see them. Okay, 8, this is a very common one and more that people are open to, are dreams and visions. A lot of times when we dream about somebody who has passed, it is their way of communicating to us. And if you are talking to them or interacting with them in the dream, know that that is happening in another dimension, and they just really want to connect with you. I had a dream a year or so ago about a woman that I knew a decade ago that passed a couple of years ago. And in the dream, she was there with her husband. And part of the message for me was to reach out to him and tell her that she's still with him. So dreams and visions, don't discount them. Okay, number 9, this is really interesting. Lost or misplaced items. So I've heard this happen to someone recently, or maybe it didn't happen recently, but she was sharing the information that her husband swear he had had two shoes together, and then one of them ended up in another room. You know, I'd heard something similar from a client where they knew beyond a shadow of a doubt something was in the closet, like up in the, in the shelf. They had put something, I forget what the thing was no longer there, and they found it in a different place in the house. So things that have been misplaced or out of place, keys, it has been said, believe it or not, that spirits can move things and change where they go. And if that happens and there's no, that no one else did it, no one physically did it, but you're like, oh, I know this was there, not there. You are not crazy. Someone might be trying to get your attention. Just food for thought. Okay, number 10, smelling things that aren't there, like flowers. I have flowers on the altar, but you might be smelling like a lily if that was your grandmother's favorite, but there are no lilies around, or a favorite perfume, or a favorite food that someone liked to eat. You're smelling that, and that is also a form of clairsalience. Check out the episode about the 8 clairs. This is a way that we get information and people are trying to communicate to us, or souls, on the other side, our people, our family. They might not even be our family. They might be someone else's, and they have a message that they need to move through you to someone else. So number 11, and there are more ways than 11, but we're going to cap it at 11, is repeating sign or repeating numbers, angel numbers. So many have probably heard like 111, 444, or 411. When you see the repeating numbers, this might mean that someone, again, is trying to get your attention from the other side of the veil. So I'm going to share the rest of, or part of a story, again, about my mother and my family, that when Sandra picked up the information about my great-great-great-grandmother and the stomach, I realized after talking to Sandra and doing some work and then calling my mom, asking her questions, not telling her what I knew, and having her validate what Sandra had picked up on, that I needed to find her name. That was the message. And my mother didn't know her name. I'm like, how am I going to do this? But, we get those intuitive hits and we follow the breadcrumbs. I was like, oh, my mother's distant cousin had tried to reach out to me years ago. And I went to Facebook to the message, and it was from 2015, but it was April 10th and the time was 4:11. And he was asking me if I could find a picture of him for his great grandmother or his grandmother. And he told me the name. And I was like, oh my gosh, that's her name. And then I looked at the next corresponding message between he and I, and it was on 4/11 the next day. And I was just like, oh, there's the repeating numbers. And she's been trying to connect for a while, or this is my interpretation. You may think I'm crazy, but I'm going with it based on many of the signs that have been coming up. And so look into the angel numbers, look into repeating numbers, repeated patterns. And, sometimes it's a loved one from the other side. And sometimes it is a message from spirit, and we can get into that another time. Spirit may be trying to communicate with you in all these ways as well, and many more, but I will leave it at that because we are focused right now on our ancestors and how they are trying to communicate with us. So it's happening more often than you know, and some of the reason for it is that they are in need of healing, or they are wanting to get in touch for you to help process something that can help heal you. Maybe you're carrying their energy. And we talked about in one of the episodes about epigenetics on how when we heal or help them heal, it heals us and it heals the line going forward as well. So I hope that that makes sense to you, or that we're going to keep talking about this concept in upcoming videos. One of the ways that we can do that, we can build altars. I will do a segment on altar building, but like I said, I built this beautiful altar behind me. And this, again, is like another one. It's a living altar. It did not start out looking this way. It's been up for a couple of weeks. It had different sets of flowers in both places, and it didn't have all the many things on it. When Sandra, Christian, and I were working on it for all of our families, I began putting things up there that were relevant to what was coming up. And some of it is a way of honoring them. So when you speak to them, honor them. And I will tell you, this time of year, at Halloween, All Saints Day, All Souls Day, Day of the Dead, that we can do this, but we can do it year round. I lit special candles in relation to them. I've listened to music of my heritage of 4 different prominent lineages of mine. I've just been listening to music, but I also put things on the altar that I wanted to change. What is placed on the altar is altar, but also honor them. Scotch and wine, things that they like to drink, some in very much excess, but to help shift that energy, honor what they liked, but shift the energy so that it's maybe hopefully not used in excess in current and future generations. So if that works for you, this information, or you resonate with it and you're like, oh yeah, that makes sense. This happens to me too. All you need to do is just notice. Start noticing the signs. Set your intention to notice the signs. Get quiet and go in and ask, what does this mean? Who is this from? And the information that pops up, begin to trust it. So I am looking forward to sharing more information with you about our ancestors and altars and spirit communication. Stay tuned. Tomorrow on All Souls Day, I am interviewing, pre-recording with the amazing Angelina Pardon, and we are going to be diving a little deeper on healing, getting information, and the use of a substance to help us do that. So thank you for watching, and I will see you next time.